analyst Kieran Shannon and former Donegal footballer Martin McHugh. Kieran, let's go back to the Munster hurling final. Were Tipperary awesome or just Waterford terrible?
Well, the obvious answer to that is both, but I think it was more that Tipperary were awesome. I think I've never seen a more complete display by a team that isn't Kilkenny. I think Kilkenny have actually been the making of Tip. In fact, in a way, losing the 2009 All-Ireland was the making of this Tip team, because you can just tell the difference in that day was taking goals. And by God, Tip, any chance they get. I mean, there's been a trend in recent years that most goals are from within 14 metres. Owen Kelly got the ball there on the 20 and he was only thinking one thing, goal. And I don't think Lark Corbett, I haven't seen a more complete forward display. 4-4. We can talk about the 4 goals, the way he got 3 goals in last year's All-Ireland. But I think the best score was his point from a puck out in the wing. The guy, I've never seen anyone on the top of his game as much. They were awesome.
Eamonn O'Hara, I know Sligo have suffered the occasional defeat. How do Waterford recover from this?
It's going to be very difficult, Marty, I'd say. You know, they prepared, no doubt, really, really well before that game, and you know, they never foreseen the final event, the final result that did come. You know, these guys will be so down on themselves. They'll be very, very probably embarrassed and disappointed with their own performances. Whether they can come back or not, it's a really, really difficult question. They have a difficult assignment against Galway, and we'll only know when the ball is put, or when the sliotar is thrown in that day, whether Waterford will have overcome that, when the real desire and the real drive to win will be there. No matter what anyone says anything to them between now and then, it'll probably just go in one way or not the other. They just have to show the character that's within this Waterford team. It is no doubt there, but I think the character needs to be shown this time around.
You mentioned about Galway, Eamonn, and Galway against Cork. Galway were very impressive, but what's gone wrong with Cork hurling?
Well, you could say what's been going on with Cork hurling for the last 5 years. You'd have to say that the nucleus of the team have been on the road a long time, but you'd have to feel that their decline has been accelerated because of mismanagement, be it from board level, and I think Dennis Walsh just got the job a bit too soon. I'd like to
Do you think he did a good job?
I don't think you can say he did a good job. I think he had a difficult job, particularly in the circumstances he inherited, but I just think he got the job too soon. The way that if Liam Sheedy got the Tipperary job 7 years ago, he wouldn't have been right. I just don't think Dennis had enough of an apprenticeship done. I'd like to see him recycled into the Cork system in a few years down the line, the way that Cyril Lyons and Ken Hogan have been with other Munster counties, having not had great senior stints, but I don't think he was the man for it. I think obviously the players have to take a certain amount of responsibility. Their absolute persistence with the short game, particularly in the middle third, but they also have to take responsibility for their own striking and touch, which was appalling. But you'd have to say they have been worn down by 3 strikes that they shouldn't have had to go on. And
but in terms of Cork, you know, they haven't won a minor All-Ireland since 2001, under 21 since 1998. Is it the infrastructure is wrong?
Yeah,
is it the attitude that's wrong? Is it the county board totally to blame?
Well, you'd have to say that it's a systems failure. You know, for hurling, basically, it's not like football, which is basically a 31 county sport. Hurling is only 9 or 10 counties, and for a county the stature of Cork, the size of it, etc., to not be in any provincial, or sorry, in any All-Ireland under 21 finals since basically '98, the minor record, that you can make excuses. Oh, we were unlucky with a call or two here in year 1, year 2, but when it goes on, absolute, like basically 2001 is the last underage All-Ireland that Cork have won. That's just appalling. And you know, it's whatever about I think part of it is some of the appointments underage, but I think it's a whole culture there, because Cork should be dominating. They should be doing what Tip and Kilkenny are doing, and I do think it comes down to the biggest appointment that Cork will be make is not who's the next hurling manager, as crucial it is, it's who's the new county secretary. And
there seems to be confusion about the process.
There is, and exactly, you have the current county board committee saying we're making the appointment. We let the clubs know this. The clubs are saying, hey, wait a second, particularly after the whole '09 saga, obviously, that they want to have a say in the forum. And I think it's only fair that there is an outside the county board, absolutely, because this is too important. You have people of a certain mindset who have come from, they've served Cork well, you can argue, for the last 30 or 40 years, but this is about the next 30 or 40 years. And I would bring in people from outside, not even just outside the county board, but people outside Cork GAA to get this appointment right, because it is about the next 40 years. If Cork don't get it right, They're way off tipping Kilkenny as is. I think if they get everything right over the next 3 or 4 years, they'll be back there. But if they're not, they'll be done for 10, 15 years.
Isn't that a valid point that Kieran is making, Martin McHugh, about the appointment of not alone managers, but indeed full-time county secretaries?
Yeah, it definitely is. They're big appointments, as Kieran said. You know, and maybe it's better to take the politics out of it and get somebody completely away from it to make that decision. You know, to interview them and do it right. But it's very important to get the full-time secretary right and take it from there. I mean, you look at Cork. I mean, the amount of clubs that's in Cork. The amount of clubs have to think that they haven't won an underage title. You know, but you know what's an interesting one about the whole discussion is going back to the Tipperary thing, the change of manager in Tipperary. You know, maybe that was a good thing in a way. I see, you know, like so Mickey Hart wasn't able to do back-to-backs. Jack O'Connor, Kerr, even with these good teams. The fact of this change in manager in Tipperary is an interesting one, that Liam Sheedy stepped down. You facing the dressing room, new voice and everything else, and that might, you know, made a difference. Their hunger is there, which mightn't have been there if Liam Sheedy maybe had to stay on. It'd be harder to get them to that same level.
They've got the right balance between. They've handled transition fantastically because the players know Declan and Tommy Dunn, and of course they still have Cian O'Neill and a lot of the back room, so they've got it just right. I think you're right. It's given a freshness to it, and they pushed it on to another level.
A lesson to be learned, perhaps, for other counties. Now, this week, Derry lost their talisman, Owen Bradley, to a cruciate knee ligament injury in the run into the Ulster final on Sunday. One man who knows his pain only too well is Limerick's John Galvin.
Come summertime, farming gets very busy. You'll be working late nights, sometimes you'll be working 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's something I've been doing my whole life. I've always loved farming, as I say, when other guys go off and buy load and Maxime and stuff like that, I buy the Farmer's Auto Trader to see what's going on, and I suppose the Bible that we rise every Thursday is the Farmer's Journal. We played a challenge match against Down up in Dublin, and it was about 15 minutes into the game. Went for a high ball with a Down fellow. As I ran towards the ball, he kind of fell over and just fell into my knee, pushing it inwards, and I heard a crack, went down in an awful lot of pain. That was on a Sunday. I had to wait till the Tuesday morning till I got the results, and the worst was said. My cruise ship was gone. That was it. We've all the work done, and you're that close to the championship. I mean, there seems to be no worse way to break a man's heart. Like, it was crushing. It was very hard to take. Working in a large company, someone go missing, I mean, it happens a lot. They have someone to cover you if you're out for a while. I suppose in a smaller farm, family-run farm like this, or you can't afford to go missing. The farm has to come first. Everything else is put second, and that's just the way it is, really. Strange thing about driving a tractor, you might be driving a tractor for 15 hours straight, and I'd be just thinking of the pain and anguish that I'm going to go through for 5 months trying to get the bloody thing right again. And you always worry that what if I don't get back to my best? What if I'm only 50%? And what if you're one of those people that, you know, they talk about, said, geez, he should have finished up with that, he should never have come back, you know. I don't want to be one of them, you know. There's no doubt about it. I mean, doing the cruise ship is the curse of GA. In Cork, you've Colin O'Neill and Kieran Sheehan, you've David Moore, and there's me. I mean, Dermot Early is another one. I don't know, is it just a coincidence that so many have happened this year, or is it just unfortunate? But I mean, I suppose look at Paddy Bradley and Owen Bradley. Like, I mean, 2 brothers both on a county team, and within 2 months of each other, they both do their cruise ships. I suppose you are going to ask questions of what's going on. I've been playing for 13 years, and I'm missing championship, and to be on the sideline against Kerry was absolutely heartbreaking. I was never one good at standing on sidelines. My real heart would be out in the middle of the field, is where I want to be. If Limerick ended up in Croke Park this year, I'm going to be delighted for the lads, because I mean, I've played with the lads for years, but I'm going to be absolutely gutted that I'm not there and I'm not part of it.
We wish John well in his recovery. Kieran, it seems like this type of injury is almost reaching epidemic levels in the GAA.
Well, exactly. John just gave a name list, and you could keep going on. Like you have, like even I see the Cork ladies footballers who've been the dominant team in that sport. But since 2005, for all the 5 All-Irelands they've won, they've had 15 cruciates. It seems like every team has been affected by this. I mean, you have in Dublin, GAA alone, between those senior hurlers and footballers, you have 7 players who have been down from this. You know, as we said, we've got the Ulster final to look forward to, and we're missing 2 of the best showmen in Ulster football. Cork have been badly affected, Kerry with David Moore, as he made reference to. So you'd have to say that when a few happen, you could call it freakish, isolated incidents, but this is a trend. Whatever about an epidemic, it is a trend, and it has to be tackled.
Okay, now we're joined from our Galway studio by Dr. Pádraig Murray, consultant knee surgeon. Good evening, Dr. Murray. Can you suggest any medical reasons for to us lay people, a substantial increase in the number of cruciate ligament injuries?
Well, there are a number of high-profile players that have cruciate injuries at the moment, but I'm not certain that there is actually a significant increase. Anterior cruciate ruptures are endemic in level 1 sports that involve jumping and landing, and I personally have treated over 150 every year over the last number of years, so I'm not sure there is a significant increase at the moment.
What are the reasons for the injuries? What causes them?
Well, as I said, it's endemic in that type of sport. However, the description you heard earlier of somebody getting hit on the side of their knee, that's typically where somebody would injure their medial ligament. But a lot of people suffer anterior cruciate ruptures by jumping and landing and twisting and turning, and surface changes. The new synthetic surfaces that were brought out over the last number of years, every time a new surface was brought out, that increased grip, what it did was secondarily increase the injuries to the knee. And it's interesting to see that in Croke Park that surface seems to be slippy. Maybe that is actually preventing some injuries in Croke Park.
And is it to do with the footwear, the boots that the
Yes.
footballers and hurlers are wearing? And is it, as you mentioned about the surface, is it sand-based surfaces in particular?
Well, it seems to be a surface that increases grip, also increases knee injuries. And over the last number of years, blades seem to be associated with an increase in anterior cruciate ruptures. Jane Campbell, a physiotherapist that worked with me, research physiotherapist, we tried to look at this with Jane over the last few years and couldn't absolutely nail this down. But the Young Scientist of the Year a number of years ago, one of their presentations was looking at this specific thing, and they seem to show a trend towards increasing ruptures with people wearing blades.
And Pádraig, can you confirm or deny, do weights have anything to do with this? Because there is this theory that the increased use of weights during the winter sessions for footballers and hurlers is having an influence.
Well, I couldn't definitely rule it in or rule it out, but certainly weight training, it all has to be done on a very scientific basis rather than just in a haphazard basis. So building some groups of muscles at the expense of others may be detrimental.
As Kieran mentioned earlier about the Cork Ladies football team, so many of them have suffered cruciate injuries. Is it more prominent, these injuries, amongst female sports people?
Yes, and that's been proven, particularly the original work on this was in elite female soccer players, particularly in the United States, and they have a very significantly higher incidence of anterior cruciate rupture compared to their elite male soccer players.
Kieran, are the GA looking at this? Is it worrying them?
Well, in fairness to them, they've said the committee are looking at this, and they're looking at pilot studies in it. So you'd have to say they're being proactive on that point. It's interesting what Pádraig's saying there. I think one of the things that they'll have to look at is, as he said, it has to be supervised conditioning. You know, is the winter ban working? You know, it seems like county boards are cutting costs and guys are training on their own in November and December, perhaps unsupervised. Another issue that you'd have to say is an issue, I think, is that I think a huge thing that they're going to have to do is look at even ankles being taped at the moment. Players are compensating for ankle ligament injuries, and you know they're actually overcompensating for that injury and increasing the likelihoods of cruciates. But you know, I do think I take the point that this has always been with us, but because it is a case of education and finding out, unfortunately we've got a huge sample group here of 15, 30 high-profile players, and actually find out to them what blades were you, what boots were you wearing, and go through all of. They might be overtrained.
Eamonn, you just did your cruciate. How did it happen, and how sore is it?
Very, very simple, Marty. Mine wasn't a contact; it was just completely on my own. I stepped left to cut in right, and I just blew the knee out. Very, very simple. It was very, very sore at the time. It was the second time I've actually done my knee, and I knew straight away that I actually had done serious damage. And like John said in his piece, it happened on Saturday evening, and I found out Tuesday morning after scan on Monday that it was completely torn. But just taking up on Kieran's point there, you know, there's a lot of talk about the blades, and you know, blades don't really come into it if it comes into if it's in contact. But it's when it happens to guys like me, who actually was wearing blades at the time. You know what I mean? You sort of ask yourself the question. I know Dr. Murray touched on there about the surface of the pitches. You know, right now, this time of weather, and you know yourself, Martin, you know, the ground is as hard as that, and if there's not a good coat of grass, the ground is rock hard. So for me personally, I think it's there's no real given on the surface of pitches nowadays, and every club is looking for a sand-based pitch that they can have, you know, 12 months of football. But the reality of it is that it has a detrimental effect at some stage. It would be interesting, I think, if there was a study done on what time of the year are fellas doing or ladies doing their cruciate ligaments. Is it at winter time, or is it when the ground conditions are hard, or is it soft? But it'd be an interesting study to see.
Let's ask Dr. Murray, is there a difference between winter and summer injuries in terms of these cruciates?
Well, there certainly is, and in people who are less trained early on, if they're competing when they're not fit, there is an increased risk. But I wouldn't be able to nail it down exactly for you on whether it's a higher incidence in the summer months or not. Well, but to take up on some of the points you made earlier, injury prevention isn't new, and there's been very good work, particularly from Scandinavia among Olympic handball players and among soccer players, where they identified the abnormal features, particularly in female soccer players, and were able to coach them out of this, particularly how they jump and land. So there's a lot of work on this that we don't have to reinvent the wheel on it, that can be applied to Gaelic sports.
And just before I leave you go, Dr. Murray, what can be done to make sure that these sort of injuries are reduced down to the minimum? What would you advise? Oh,
to look at injury prevention mechanisms and to build it into the training that all these athletes do on a regular basis. So as part of their warm-up, they do strategies which involve correct jumping and landing drills and correct twisting and turning, as Eamonn mentioned there. That's how he did it. An awful lot of these injuries are non-contact injuries and can be coached out of people. Now, I'm not at all suggesting that we can eliminate this injury, but we can reduce the number of preventable injuries. OK, well, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Pádraig Murray, for joining us in our Galway studios. Now, this Sunday, the last two provincial championships of the year will be played in Connacht and Ulster, and the four remaining...
Yeah, there's a real feel-good factor in there, Roscommon. You know, I spoke to a number of Roscommon people, and they've nothing but great things to say about Fergal O'Donnell and what he has done, but there seems to be a sort of a conveyor belt of, you know, the minor levels which is coming through, the guys that won the All-Ireland.
Can they cope with that expectation?
Well, that's the biggest question. I think they went into the All-Ireland or the Connacht final against us last year, and you know, there was no pressure on them at all, and you know, the reality is that the blew us out of the water, even though they only bet us by a point. But you know, they really developed into a very, very good team. You know, probably the worst performance this year was probably the league final against Longford. But there's an expectation there. I think right now, and I suppose it's just a general comment, that, you know, Connacht football wouldn't be particularly great at the moment. I think Roscommon are the best team in Connacht right now. Really? You know, on any given day, and I suppose I have to say this, the fact that Leitrim bet Sligo, any team can beat anyone. But right now, I think Roscommon are the up-and-coming team, and are the team on form. What
are your thoughts on Mayo, Martin? Because they were poor against Galway and poorer against London.
Yeah, and suppose from Roscommon's point of view, Marty, they probably still want to beat, with no disrespect to Sligo, they want to beat one of the big twos. They haven't beaten any of the big teams, like even won it last year. But from Mayo's point of view, I think James Horan's trying to change the Mayo style of football. He's taking in the northern style of football into it. It's going to take a while to get that there. Mayo players are not suited to that there. And it's interesting, he has Trevor Mortimer playing in defence. I feel maybe he'd be better in the forward line. He's playing those shades at midfield, or maybe naturally forwards. He's doing that. Now, we see in Laois, Justin McNulty's trying to do the same thing. It's going to take a while to do that, to change their style of football. Kildare took Kieran McGinney a while. He's got it right now. So I think it's going to take a while to do that. But I think Mayo are naturally talented footballers and just like going out and playing football. And it'll be interesting to see, will he be able to cope with that?
I think, though, you could see from the Galway game that I think he's getting that blend into them. I think, like, OK, Freeman and Doherty inside didn't light it up the way I think they will on Sunday, but I think there's an honesty about them, and as you say, it'll take a while to get to where they want to, but I think they can win Connacht right now.
Just on that point, I think it's important that James he won a Connacht title, or a county title with Ballintubber, and he has four or five guys in there in the team at the moment, and it seems to be working for them right now. But I think
it's the same style of football with the club team as well.
Absolutely, it seems to be very much a negative type of thing. But the thing is that Andy Moran is carrying this team. I think they need, as individuals, they need to step up individually, because Andy Moran, when he was needed, won in extra time over in London, and when Galway really put a push on them. It was Andy Moore and they stepped up, but they need more guys to step up.
Very briefly, in a word, we're going to do a committee room assessment here. Mayo or Roscommon?
Roscommon are the best team, but I think Mayo are going to win on Sunday.
So you're going for Mayo?
Yeah.
I'll go for Mayo as well.
Two.
Mayo.
Mayo, unanimous. Most unusual in the committee room. The Ulster final is really intriguing. Were there huge expectations that Donegal would make this Ulster Championship so thrilling from their perspective, maybe not for the other supporters outside?
I think somebody said there were 12 to 1 to 1 Ulster at the start. Anybody that got a bet on them? No, we wouldn't expect it. I mean, again, a new manager, and it's going to take a while to do it. But there's great excitement in the county, there's great buzz in the county, and you know, it's you know, Donegal and Derry, they're great rivals there between the two teams. So look at Donegal people and the team are looking forward to it. You know, very well prepared. You know, it's interesting when you have a young manager against an older manager. We see McHugh last weekend, he didn't go away. So it's going to be a great battle. But the one thing I'll say about Marty is that they've only got a 6-day turnaround, the losers. And I think that's very, very unfair. You know, Connacht now with our Wicklow game ended draw, the Connacht losers have a 13-day turnaround. You know, Wexford is a 13-day turnaround in Leinster, and Munster is a 20-day turnaround. So I think that definitely in that decision should be made this week to put their match back as well, to give them a chance. Because Sligo last year put everything into one in Ulster, or into Connacht. Monaghan put everything into Ulster and got beaten, you know, and I think it's unfair.
In terms of Owen Bradley, how big a loss is he? Very briefly.
Yeah, he's a big loss. I mean, he's worth about 1.5 in my opinion any day, you know, different days. He's a big loss, and it's just, you know, for the fellow himself, it's very disappointing personally for himself. But the other lads will go out to do it for him, but he is a tremendous loss. I mean, he's been maybe one of the best players this year we've seen, his individual performance. He was going to be, in my opinion, be an all-star and everything else, so disappointing from that point of view.
Who's going to win it? Ulster?
Donegal. They're on a mission.
I'll say Derry.
Martin McHugh, and your son possibly playing on the team.
Yeah, I think Donegal Donegal didn't play well. They haven't played well this year, and they haven't played well against Tyrone. They got 1 point from play at the very start of the second half, and that's what they got with the 2 goals and 1 free. They're going to need to improve on that.
I think you're trying to try to defer this pressure off Donegal. I actually think Donegal are going to win it, Marty, for sure, and they're going to win well. Okay,
let me go on to the football qualifier. That wonderful tie that we expect between Meath and Kildare. Kieran, who do you think will win?
I think Kildare, absolutely, because I just think that they're much better even when they beat the Meath there about 6 weeks ago. They're just so strong, and again they're used to this groove of week in, week out, game week in, week out suits them. Even though it's in Park Talton, I expect Kildare to win by 5 or 6.
You know what's an interesting stat about Kildare is that they've won every second half by at least 3 points, which means their level of fitness is there. They're able to do that.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we could continue on for another half an hour. Thank you very much.